All right, good afternoon. Hope you're doing well on this Tuesday afternoon. We're going to do a Rashi from the third Aliyah here in Parshas Kisese. The very beginning of the Aliyah, speaking to Debbie's background from yesterday, is the mitzvah
And
of
today,
Makkah. I told you I would get to it, and today, yes, um, is the mitzvah of Makkah. The pasuk says, "Ki sivne bayis chadash v'asisa Makkah legagecha." Velo sasim damim bebesecha ki pol hanofel mimenu. When you build a new house, you have to put a guardrail around the roof so that you don't put blood in your home, meaning so you're not culpable for someone falling off the roof, chas shalom, and dying. Ki pol hanofel mimenu, a strange phrase, so that the person who's fallen should not fall from it. So just to speak to a couple of the simpler Rashis, he defines Ma'akeh. Ma'akeh is Gader Saviv. It's a fence around it. And he cites further proof to that concept from Onkelos, from the Aramaic translation here on the Pasuk. The Onkelos Tirgem, Tika. He translated as Tika, Ke'ain Tik. What's a tik? Even in modern Hebrew, a tik,
brief
bag, a bag.
backpack.
Sometimes exactly some type of sack. So if you have a backpack, it's called a tick. If you have a purse or a larger bag, it's called a tick. So, or even if you have a file, let's say a file folder or a file, an e-file, a file that they open for you at the bank, it's called a tick. A tick. So what's the commonality between a tick, file, a backpack, and the fence around your roof? The common denominator is they're all enclosed. They protect something. If you put a piece of paper in an envelope, it's there to surround it and protect it. If you put your bags in a knapsack, it's there to protect it so your work don't fall all over the place, they don't get wet. So too with the guardrail, it's meant to enclose in order to protect. Actually, a beautiful Aramaic translation of the word makeh. Shu mishamer masher besocho. It guards that which is enclosed by it. So here, asisa ma'ake, you should make a ma'ake, or in Aramaic, a tik, some tika, an enclosure, a bag, a surrounding to protect what's on the roof. What is ki yipol hanofel mimenu? So that the one who's fallen shouldn't fall from it. What is the one who's fallen? What's hanofel? Someone who's already falling shouldn't fall. What does that mean? Rashi says, Ze ra'ui lipol. There might be people out there in the world who, based on God's judgment, really should justifiably fall off the roof. They're deserving of that punishment. They're deserving maybe even of misa b'dei shamayim, of death at the hand of God, not capital punishment in the Jewish court, but in God's calculus, somehow this person had did such an egregious thing in life that they're deserving of death. So normally death would happen in a number of, accidental kind of ways here in the world. You wouldn't see God swoop down and cause the person to die. It would happen in a sort of covert manner. So even though God might want to utilize your roof as his method of inflicting this punishment on the person who's deserving of it, nevertheless, you don't need to be negligent in a way that your possessions, your roof, your house, your yard should be complicit in causing the person to die. So God can find another way for that to happen. It doesn't happen to have to happen through you. Even though he's deserving of death, doesn't have to happen at your hand. Shouldn't happen at your hand. Shouldn't happen because of your negligence. People who already know goodness in the world can be the vehicle to cause more bad things to happen. It doesn't have to happen through righteous, good people who have proper intentions. That's ki pol hanofel mimenu, to prevent the one who's fallen, meaning the one who's deserving of death, from falling, meaning they don't need to fall off your roof. Okay. I just want to point to the beginning of the Rashi here because I think there's a larger point that he makes, not specifically about the mitzvah of Makeh, but about the total order of our parsha. He says, "Im kiyamta mitzvah shiluach haken." Before this, in the parsha, we have the mitzvah of shiluach haken, of sending away the mother bird. So he says, "Im kiyamta shiluach haken, sofcha livnos bayis." You're gonna build a home. Ulakaya mitzvah makeh, and if when you build that home, you fulfill the mitzvah of makeh, putting a guardrail around the roof. So mitzvah goreres mitzvah. V'tagia lekerem v'sadeh ubegadim naim lekach nismechu parshios halal. And if you do all that, the mitzvah shiluch haken allows you the bracha to build a house. And from that house, you get opportunity for another mitzvah, which you fulfill of makeh. One mitzvah leads to another mitzvah. Then you can get the bracha not only to have a house, but to have a field and a vineyard and all these other things, which will allow you to fulfill all the mitzvahs after our pasuk about not planting different seeds next to each other and not engaging in what we call kilayim, either the planting or the weaving of different kinds of materials together. So there's a sequence here: shiluach hakein, bayis, makeh, kerem, kilayim, all of these different facets of the parsha. Basically saying there's a snowball effect of brachos. Mitzvah goreres mitzvah. When you do one mitzvah, it brings more mitzvahs. When you get one bracha, it brings more bracha, more bracha. If you carry along that path, God gives you a little bit of a bracha, a taste of a blessing. And if you grab it right and engage with it in a mitzvah fashion to do more mitzvahs with that, you take it as an opportunity to
Can I just get a roll of quarters, please?
To do more mitzvahs, then God will continue to give you those opportunities to do more and more and to continue down that path. That's the sequence here of mitzvah goreres mitzvah. And it's the exact counterpoint to Rashi at the beginning of the parsha, where we have the opposite effect, where you have one bad thing spiraling down into others. If you look at the beginning of the parsha, we start with the issue or the mitzvah of Eshes Yefas Toar. If soldiers are in battle and they see a captive woman, a non-Jewish woman, the Torah allows a certain method for her to become married to the Jewish soldiers. And Rashi says here, Lo dibra Torah ela keneged yetzer hara. This is not a lechatchila. This is not something God wants. God doesn't want his Jewish soldiers seeking after non-Jewish captive women from the opposite army. But understanding human weakness, understanding that soldiers will be susceptible to their desires in this circumstance, God makes a concession to that human weakness, and under a certain rubric, under certain parameters, allows the soldier to marry this woman. Because God understands in the midst of war, stress is high, could cause us to lose the entirety of the war if soldiers would not be allowed to engage in this act, and if God didn't find a permissible way of them doing it, they're going to do it in a forbidden way. And therefore, God made this concession to allow them to marry the Eshes Yefas Toar. Aval, but just because there's a way that it's allowed doesn't mean it should be done. And if it is done, it's just a concession to human weakness and something that will cause a certain corruption in the moral fabric of this human being and perhaps of the society, so much so that it's going to spiral down to other bad things. You can do this, there's permission for it, but not prescription for it. There's no desire God has for you to do this. If you do it, Im Nisa, Sofa Liosona, Shenamar Acharav, Kitian al Ish, Vesofa Laholi Bimenu Ben Sora or Mora, Lakach, Nismachu Parshios Halalu. In the beginning of the Torah, we have Eshes Yefas Toar, which leads to a situation the Torah describes of two wives, one which is hated, one which is loved, and the laws of the firstborn in that circumstance. And then the topic of Ben Sora Umora, the child who goes off the path and has to be executed, Chas v'shalom. So you see here, Rashi says, a downward spiral. If you take advantage of this permission for Eshes Torah, you're going to lead to a situation, a wife that's hated. A wife that's hated is going to lead to a child who goes off the derech. Child that goes off the derech leads to Ben Sora Omora. It's a downward spiral of Avera Goreris Avera, so to speak. These are not Averos per se, but they're negative kinds of behaviors that yield to more negative kinds of behaviors. So our Rashi today is the mirror image of that. Just one aliyah, two aliyahs later, we have the mirror image. Just like you could have a downward spiral, the Torah points to the fact that you could have an upward spiral. If you gauge a positive action, mitzvos, in taking the brachos God gives you and taking advantage of them, you can lead upward, spiraling up that ladder, that staircase towards greater bracha and towards more mitzvos, in the same way as you could slide down. It's all a matter of choice of what you begin to engage with. And from that beginning can come good or can come chas v'shalom, the opposite. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, you too.
Well.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Good day.
Bye.